Snow whispered down the mountainside, drifting in loose spirals that blurred the jagged edges of stone and pine. The wind carried no birdsong, no trace of wildlife, only the low, endless moan of air cutting through frozen peaks. It was a place where silence weighed heavier than stone, and where a patient man could vanish into the earth itself. Hale had chosen it because it punished the careless, because it rewarded endurance, and because it gave him the only advantage left against enemies who had never known hardship. He lay prone on a ledge crusted with frost, his body concealed beneath a ghillie suit patched with twigs and shredded cloth hardened by ice. The rifle beneath his cheek was a familiar weight, long-barreled and silenced, its metal wrapped in tape and frost cloth to keep it from gleaming. Through his scope, he studied the valley floor below, a wasteland of broken pines and deep snow cut by frozen streams. His heartbeat was measured, deliberate, every inhale and exhale disciplined by years of practice. Hale had been a soldier once, before the sky burned and the first ships appeared. He had fought wars against men who looked him in the eye, who bled red when struck, who broke and ran when their courage failed. That world was gone. Now he fought enemies who descended from orbit in fire, armored in technology humanity could not match, soldiers bred or engineered for perfection. They had crushed cities with contemptuous ease, not with bombs, but with methodical occupation, as if they were taming an unruly wilderness rather than conquering equals. In the wilderness of Earth's mountains, one man could still matter. He shifted slightly, snow flaking from his sleeve, and studied the faint shimmer at the valley's edge. To the untrained eye was nothing but a distortion in the falling snow, like heat waves rising from asphalt. But Hale had learned to recognize it, the cloaking field that shimmered faintly when the aliens moved through storm or smoke. He tracked the distortion until figures resolved into focus. 5 of them, always 5, as though numbers alone were a law of their kind. They were tall, 7 feet at least, each clad in segmented armor that pulsed with veins of pale blue light. Their helmets were smooth, faceless, and their weapons sleek instruments of energy whose faint hum carried even through the snow. They advanced in precise formation, scanning the terrain with devices that projected invisible webs of detection. Nothing about them betrayed urgency or fear. They were predators, confident and exact, moving as though the world itself belonged to them. Hale watched them without blinking, memorizing their pattern of movement, the rhythm of their scanning arcs. His cheek pressed cold against the rifle stock, but he ignored the sting. He knew their technology was formidable, sensors that could read a heartbeat through walls, drones that mapped terrain in 3 dimensions. But he also knew their weakness. They had never lived where the air froze lungs and avalanches killed without warning. They had never been forced to hide for hours, motionless, with snow suffocating every breath. Machines could not mimic instinct, and instinct was what kept him alive. He thought briefly of the last squad that had entered these mountains. He had taken them one by one, each shot deliberate, each ambush a lesson in humility. He had left one survivor on purpose, a trembling thing that staggered back toward the horizon, carrying with it the knowledge that Earth still had teeth. That survivor had brought reinforcements, and now the hunt was different. These soldiers carried themselves with more vigilance, their formation tighter, their movement sharper. And behind them, somewhere unseen, he suspected a commander watched, studying him as carefully as he studied them. Hale's finger rested lightly on the trigger. He could take one now. The shot would be easy, almost effortless, a clean round through the seam between helm and chest plate. But patience whispered in his ear. If he struck too soon, they would adapt. If he struck too late, they would find him. Timing was everything, and he had learned to let opportunity ripen before plucking it. The lead alien raised a gauntlet hand, signaling the squad to halt. The others froze instantly, weapons raised, scanning arcs widening. Hale's pulse slowed even further. They were suspicious now. Perhaps they smelled the memory of death lingering in this valley. Perhaps their machines whispered of anomalies. Either way, they were closer than ever to discovering him. He slid his eye from the scope and studied the terrain with naked sight. Snow-laden trees bowed low to the storm, their branches groaning faintly. The slope beneath him angled toward a cluster of rocks, jagged teeth rising from the valley floor. If he struck from here and retreated quickly, he could vanish into the rocks before their scanners recalibrated. It would not win the war, but it would keep the legend alive. The phantom sniper who haunted mountains, who could not be trapped. The alien formation resumed movement, slower now, each step deliberate. Hale settled back into the scope, crosshairs hovering over the second soldier in line. He steadied, waited, his body a coil of stillness. And then a sound, faint, metallic, a drone whirring above. Hale's eyes flicked upward to see a sphere drifting through the snow, its lattice glowing, scanners sweeping in cold arcs. He pressed his body tighter against the ledge, slowed his breath until his chest barely rose. The light washed over him, lingering before drifting on. He had beaten their machines again, but only barely. The squad moved beneath the drone's path, oblivious to the man watching from above. Hale exhaled slowly, and for the first time in hours, allowed a thought uncoiled from deep within. He was tired, not from the cold or the hunger, though those gnawed at him too, but from the endless repetition of it. Hunt, kill, vanish. Always alone, always waiting. Yet fatigue did not weaken his resolve. If anything, it sharpened it. He was not fighting for victory. He was fighting for memory, for defiance, for proof that humanity was not yet broken. Through the scope, he saw the moment unfold. One alien strayed a pace too far from formation, stepping into a shallow depression in the snow. Hale adjusted his aim, crosshairs settling on the exposed joint at the back of the knee. He drew a breath, released it, and squeezed the trigger. The rifle whispered, recoil pressing against his shoulder. The alien collapsed instantly, glowing veins dimming as snow swallowed him. The formation froze, confusion rippling through them, helmets jerking toward every shadow. Hale was already moving, sliding back from the ledge, leaving no trace but compressed snow. Plasma beams tore into the cliff seconds later, searing stone and boiling frost, but he was gone. He slipped into a narrow chute, boots finding purchase on ice, rifle hugged close. Behind him, alien voices rose, harsh and metallic, sharp with alarm. Hale did not need to understand the language to know what it carried. Fear wrapped in fury. They would tighten their net now, they would adapt, but the seed had been planted again. He crouched in shadow, lungs burning, and allowed himself a faint smile. The hunt had truly begun. The body in the snow had not yet cooled before the aliens closed in around it. Their formation tightened, weapons sweeping across the storm as if they could erase Hale from the landscape with sheer vigilance. He watched from a hollow in the rocks high above, breath shallow, body rigid. Every instinct told him to stay invisible, but the sniper in him understood that stillness was not enough. Stillness made you prey. Movement, deliberate and invisible, made you a ghost. He eased backward, boots finding memorized footholds, and slid into a gully carved by wind. Snow swallowed him whole, gilly fibers bristling with frost. The alien scanners passed overhead in luminous waves, green-blue grids that mapped the terrain, but not the man buried inside it. Hale knew the limits of their technology now. They hunted heat and movement, and he offered neither. Below, the squad formed a circle around their fallen comrade. One knelt and pressed a gauntlet against the corpse's armor, sending out a flare of energy that crackled in the air. Hale felt it tingle against his skin even at this distance. A report, no doubt, a signal sent back to whatever ship hung above the clouds. Reinforcements would come, eventually. He could not let that matter. His war was here and now. The aliens broke formation, fanning wider than before. Their arrogance had cracked, but their discipline held. Hale noted the difference. Before, they had moved with calm inevitability. Now, there was a sharpness, a suspicion in every turn of their helmets. He had wounded their pride, and pride was leverage. Hale moved along the ridge, careful to stay just ahead of their sweep. Every few meters, he paused, studied their patterns, and mapped their behavior in his mind. The soldier in him admired their efficiency. The predator in him searched for weakness. He found one when the storm thickened again. Visibility dropped to less than 50 meters. The aliens tightened instinctively, closer together, and their formation lost flexibility. Hale settled into a pocket of shadow beneath an outcrop, set his rifle, and waited. Patience had always been his deadliest weapon. The second alien revealed himself by sound, not sight. A faint crunch of snow, too heavy, too deliberate. Hale's scope caught the shape a moment later. The shimmer of armor, the faint pulse of blue veins glowing against white. He adjusted his aim, slow as ice breaking in spring. The crosshairs drifted until they rested against the alien's side, where plates overlapped and light pulsed weakly. He exhaled, squeezed. The shot cracked softly, muffled, but not silent. The alien staggered, dropped to one knee, then collapsed into the drift. The squad wheeled in unison, energy beams slicing across the snow. Hale rolled from his position, leaving only a shallow depression. Plasma hissed against the rocks where he had lain seconds before, sending shards of molten stone into the storm. His boots carried him downslope into a ravine, legs burning, lungs steady. He had trained for this all his life. Shoot, move, vanish. The cold no longer existed. Pain was irrelevant. Only survival, only the kill. The aliens regrouped again, but their voices were sharper now, tones clipped, urgent. Their arrogance was unraveling into something he recognized, fear hidden behind discipline. He had seen it in men before, and now he saw it in beings who claimed to be gods of the stars. He set another trap, a cluster of rocks balanced on a ledge above a narrow pass. With careful movements, he loosened them just enough that the slightest vibration would bring them down. Then he laid tracks in the snow leading into the pass, his boot prints deliberately obvious, the trail of prey too careless to hide. Minutes later, he watched from concealment as two aliens followed the trail. Their weapons were raised, their scanners sweeping. They never looked up. Hale's hand flicked a stone against the ledge, and gravity did the rest. Boulders thundered down, smashing into armor, breaking formation, and burying one of them beneath a weight no technology could deflect. The other scrambled free, but stumbled into Hale's line of fire. The suppressed shot ended his panic before it could become a warning. 3 down. 2 remained. For the first time, Hale allowed himself a breath of satisfaction. Not triumph. Never that. Not yet, but recognition that he had broken them piece by piece. They were stronger, faster, armored in ways he could not comprehend, yet they bled and broke when stone crushed them and bullets found gaps. They were not untouchable. The last 2 regrouped at the fallen, their glowing armor bright against the storm. Hale could feel their anger even at a distance. They fired blindly into the cliffs, their beams carving molten scars across rock and ice. Hale stayed low, silent, letting their rage expend itself. He knew what would follow. Rage turned to caution, and caution slowed them down. His position was no longer safe. They would triangulate eventually, no matter how well he hid. He began to retreat deeper into the mountains, steps deliberate, body blending into the storm. Behind him, the aliens prowled, slower now, deliberate in their own way. They would not stop. Hale thought of Earth far below the orbiting ships, of cities darkened by fear, of people waiting for a sign that resistance mattered. He did not fight for medals or commands. He fought so that when the stories were told, they would say that humanity did not bow. If one sniper could haunt the mountains and make giants bleed, then perhaps others would find courage to fight. He reached a cliffside overlooking a frozen valley and paused. The world stretched before him, white and endless, silent but for the storm. Somewhere beyond that horizon, ships hung in orbit, watching. Somewhere below, his hunters crept closer, relentless. He chambered another round, feeling the smooth brass slide into place. His hands were steady. The storm eased slightly, revealing 2 glowing figures against the snow. They moved with caution now, scanning every shadow, weapons raised. Hale smiled faintly. They were learning, yes, but too late. He had already become part of the mountain, and the mountain had endless patience. He settled behind the rifle, cheek pressed against frozen steel, eyes sharp. His breathing slowed, each inhale measured, each exhale silent. The crosshairs aligned with the nearer figure. He waited, letting the alien step just far enough to expose its flank. One shot. The alien spawn fell. The last soldier froze, armor glowing brighter, weapons sweeping in desperation. Hale shifted, repositioned, prepared. The hunt was not finished. The mountain kept its silence, but Hale felt it watching with him. Hale's world narrowed to the crunch of his boots in the snow and the burn of cold air in his lungs. The storm had thinned to a bitter haze, making every ridge and shadow sharper, every movement more dangerous. Somewhere behind him, the alien survivors adjusted their hunt. He could not see them now, but he felt their presence pressing against the mountains like wolves closing in on a stag. He stopped beneath an overhang, listening. The silence stretched, thick and brittle. A faint hum broke it, a drone's wings slicing through the air. He dropped to the ground, rifle tucked close, body flattened against the stone. The drone drifted overhead, a sphere glowing faintly with blue latticework, its scanners combing the snow for heat. Hale slowed his breathing until it was almost nothing. The beam passed within a meter of his body, washing him in pale light, but his ghillie suit and the ice-cold rock kept him hidden. When the drone moved on, he slid into a cleft in the cliff face and forced himself deeper into shadow. His pulse steadied. The aliens were adapting, learning. He had cut down 3 of them, but their technology was not static, nor was their patience. Sooner or later, they would catch him if he relied only on stillness and snow. He would need to strike harder, faster, with more precision. A flicker of movement below drew his eye. The last 2 soldiers moved carefully along the valley floor, their armor gleaming faintly, no longer arrogant, no longer careless. Between them walked another figure, taller, heavier, armor traced with red lines that pulsed like a heartbeat. Hale felt his stomach tighten. A commander. This one carried himself with an assurance the others had lacked. His weapon held low but ready, his pace unhurried. This was no mere tracker. This was a hunter of hunters. Hale's hands tightened on the rifle. He had hoped to whittle the squad to nothing, to bleed them until they fled. But this commander changed everything. His presence meant escalation. The aliens would not let a single sniper define the balance of this war. They had sent someone who could end him. He scanned their formation, searching for flaws. The commander walked between his soldiers, confident, but not careless. The body language spoke of experience, shoulders low, weapon angled toward the ridges, helmet turning smoothly to cover blind spots. Hale knew the type. He had followed men like that into battle before, and he had buried more than a few. Still, the presence of such a leader meant this hunt was no longer about discipline alone. Now it was personal. The thought stirred something in Hale that he had not felt in years. Pride, perhaps, or grim satisfaction. If they sent their best against him, then they feared him. Fear was currency in war. He shifted his position, crawling along the ledge until he found an angle where the snow drifted just enough to shield his muzzle flash. The crosshairs floated over the nearest soldier, then slid to the commander. Every instinct screamed for patience, yet every calculation told him this was his moment. He steadied, slowed, and squeezed. The shot cracked through the storm. The soldier to the commander's left dropped instantly, armor sparking as the round pierced a joint. The commander pivoted, weapon rising, and the second soldier unleashed a volley of plasma into the cliffs. Hale rolled back as molten stone erupted around him. Heat seared through his ghillie suit, the air stinking of scorched rock and metal. He slid down the slope into deeper snow, heart hammering, lungs tight. The mountain sheltered him, but not perfectly. Plasma beams carved gouges into the ridges above, sending avalanches of powder cascading down. The commander's voice carried through the storm, harsh and guttural, commanding, steady. Hale did not need to understand the words. Tone was enough. This was no panic. This was a predator tightening the net. He crouched behind a fallen tree, checked his rifle, and chambered another round. His hands remained steady, though his pulse thudded in his ears. He was bleeding time now. Every engagement risked their scanners adapting, narrowing the margin until he had nowhere left to vanish. The second soldier appeared on the ridge opposite, moving low, sweeping with his weapon. Hale waited, scope tracking the alien's helmet as it turned slowly toward him. He let the crosshairs rest a fraction longer, then fired. The soldier tumbled into the snow, glowing lines dimming as silence swallowed him. The commander reacted instantly, firing into Hale's position with precision. Beams carved through wood, splitting the tree, searing holes into the earth. Hale rolled again, snow filling his mouth, his sides scraping raw against rock. Pain flared, but he forced it down, forced himself to keep moving. He had faced worse, and pain was just another signal to be ignored. When he found shelter behind a jagged outcrop, he risked a glance back. Only the commander remained now, standing in the open, armor bright against the storm. He made no attempt to conceal himself, no attempt to retreat. The hunter wanted him to see, wanted him to understand. Hale wiped the frost from his scope and studied the alien stance. Calm, patient, deliberate. Not a soldier panicked by losses, but one who had been waiting for this confrontation all along. A strange calm settled over Hale. He recognized the shape of this battle now. No more cat and mouse. The last of the squad was dead, and the commander would not leave until one of them fell. This was no longer a hunt. It was a duel. Hale breathed slowly, gathering his strength. His body ached, his muscles stiff from hours in the snow, his face raw from the wind. But his mind was sharp, and his will unbroken. He thought of Earth again, of the people who could never know his name, and he drew purpose from their silence. The commander raised his weapon slowly, deliberately, as though inviting Hale to witness the moment. Hale lowered his cheek to the rifle, steadied his scope, and let the crosshairs find the alien's heart. The storm screamed around them, two hunters locked in silence, each waiting for the other to break. Hale did not fire. Not yet. Timing would decide this, and he would not waste his breath on impatience. The commander was clever, perhaps clever enough to anticipate the rhythm of his shots. So Hale slowed everything, let his body sink into the mountain, let his will stretch thinner than the storm. The alien took a step forward. Snow cracked underfoot. Hale's finger curled against the trigger. The mountain held its breath, and then he fired. The shot missed, glancing from the commander's armor in a spray of sparks. Hale swore under his breath, rolled away as the alien's plasma roared back, lighting the cliff like lightning striking earth. Stone shattered, snow melted, the world erupted. Hale stumbled down the slope, lungs burning, ribs screaming. He hit the ground hard but kept the rifle tight in his grip. Above him, the commander advanced, slow and relentless. The duel had begun, and there would be no retreat. Snow stung Hale's eyes as he scrambled across the ridge, body battered from the near miss, rifle clutched like a lifeline. The commander's pursuit was deliberate, unhurried, almost ceremonial. Every plasma burst carved the mountain, not wild but precise, as though the alien sought to shepherd him into a killing ground. Hale's breath rasped, but his mind stayed cold. He had fought men who relied on brute force before. The commander's strength lay not only in firepower, but in patience equal to his own. He ducked behind a shattered boulder, chest heaving. The storm screamed overhead, snow ripping sideways in sheets, masking sound and movement. He checked his rifle. The suppressor was pitted, the stock scarred, but it was still a weapon capable of cutting gods down to size. He wiped frost from the scope, chambered another round, and whispered to himself, one more. The commander's silhouette emerged through the haze, glowing armor stark against the storm. He moved with unsettling calm, weapon cradled low, helm sweeping the ridges as if he could see through stone. Hale steadied his aim, exhaled, and fired. The shot struck the alien's shoulder, jerking him back a step. Sparks burst from the armor, but the commander did not fall. He raised his weapon and returned fire with a searing beam that split the boulder in two. Shards rained down on Hale, forcing him to roll downslope, snow filling his mouth and ears. Pain lanced through his ribs as he hit the ground, but he pushed up, legs screaming. He slid into a ravine, pressing himself against the icy wall. His breath clouded, but his resolve hardened. He could not outlast this enemy by attrition. He would need cunning sharper than bullets. The ravine narrowed into a choke point where jagged cliffs leaned close, forming a natural funnel. Hale studied it quickly, his soldiers' mind mapping possibilities. If he could bait the commander into the gap, he could turn the mountain itself into a weapon. His pack still held the last of his explosives, enough to trigger a collapse if placed well. He worked quickly, hands steady despite the cold, planting charges beneath overhanging stone. Each movement was deliberate, precise. He had no second chance. The hum of the commander's approach grew louder. Hale slid into position, rifle resting on a ledge, detonator clutched in his offhand. He steadied his breath, forced his heartbeat into rhythm, and waited. Snow swirled thicker, cloaking him, yet the glowing figure cut through the storm, advancing without hesitation. The commander entered the choke point, weapon raised, helm scanning. For the first time, Hale sensed caution. Perhaps the alien knew the terrain was wrong, too confined. But pride kept him moving forward. Pride, Hale thought grimly, was a weakness even across species. Hale let the alien draw closer. 10 meters. 5. The ground trembled faintly under the commander's armored steps. Hale's finger brushed the trigger, but he resisted. One shot might wound him. One collapse could bury him. Timing mattered more than breath. The alien turned, helm tilting as though he sensed the trap. Plasma hissed at the cliffs, searing stone, shaking loose dust. Hale pressed the detonator. The charges roared, stone splitting with a sound like thunder. The cliff face collapsed, an avalanche of rock and ice crashing down on the commander. The world shook, snow billowing upward in choking clouds. Hale shielded his face, waiting for silence. When the echoes faded, only rubble remained where the commander had stood. He exhaled, relief flooding his chest, knees buckling against the icy ground. It was over. Then the rubble shifted. A glowing hand punched through stone, claws of metal tearing free. The commander rose from the debris, armor scarred and cracked, but body unbroken. His glow burned brighter, rage shimmering in every motion. Hale's stomach clenched. He had underestimated the alien's resilience. The commander advanced, slower now, limping slightly but relentless. Hale dragged himself upright, rifle raised. His shots rang out, one after another, sparking off fractured plates, punching through weakened joints. Each impact slowed the alien, drove him back but did not end him. The rifle clicked empty. Hale ejected the magazine, jammed another in place, and kept firing. One round found its mark, piercing the commander's thigh. The alien staggered, dropped to one knee, yet still raised his weapon, plasma sizzling in the storm. Hale dove aside as the beam scorched the snow where he had stood, the heat blistering his exposed skin. He crawled behind another outcrop, chest heaving, mind racing. Ammunition was dwindling. His body screamed with exhaustion. The duel was reaching its final moment. He forced his thoughts calm, forced himself to remember every lesson carved into him over years of war. Patience, precision, resolve. The commander limped forward, armor cracked, helm glowing dimmer now. Hale steadied his rifle for the last time, scope fixed on the alien's chest. He inhaled, exhaled, let his finger tighten. The shot cracked, slamming into the commander's torso. The alien reeled, stumbled, yet did not fall. Hale fired again and again, each round hammering into weakened armor until at last the glow flickered. The commander raised his weapon for one final strike. Hale's last bullet chambered, barrel steady despite the storm tearing around him. He placed the crosshairs on the alien's helm and fired. The shot pierced through, shattering luminescence, scattering fragments across the snow. The commander collapsed, body sinking into the white, glow extinguished. Silence returned to the mountain. Hale lowered his rifle, chest tight with exhaustion and triumph laced with grief. His breath came ragged, his hands numb, but he remained standing. One man, one rifle, against a squad of gods. The mountain bore witness, eternal and cold. He stumbled closer to the fallen commander, studying the cracked armor, the alien features hidden within the shattered helm. For a moment, Hale almost felt respect. The creature had hunted him with skill, with honor even. They had both known this would end with only one walking away. Snow swirled again, covering the battlefield, erasing prints, burying the dead. Hale slung his rifle across his back and turned toward the ridges beyond. Pain flared in every muscle, yet his mind was clear. The galaxy would hear of this. Word would spread that a single human, bound to his mountain, had broken their finest. Fear would grow in the spaces between stars, and humanity would have bought time. He moved slowly, step by step, vanishing into the storm once more. Behind him, the mountains swallowed the dead, and silence returned. Hale's war was not finished, but tonight he had written its first true legend.